Hi, welcome. Please have a seat. There are seats available. Hi, come in, come in. There are seats right there. Don't be shy.
Good morning. My name is Steve de La Fortrie. I'm the operation manager of Le Méridien Nouméa. I'd like first to welcome you all, and I wish you a good conference during this week. I won't take long. It will take only 1 or 2 minutes. I will just talk about fire and safety. So, in the event that we would face anything similar to fire, and an alarm will ring, in this specific room, you can see at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 green signs, and all these signs can be used to exit the property. We have 2 assembly areas wherever you will follow the different steps to go outside. One is nearby the parking, and the second one is at the other extremity of the property, which is nearby the beach, at a restaurant called Fare. So that would be our 2 assembly points. This scenario will only occur if you will hear the alarm of the hotel asking to exit the property. So that's the main safety point that I would like to share with you. There is another 2, which there is very little chance that can occur. Once in a while, we get a little bit of earthquake here, a bit very so far. For a couple of years I've been here. We can feel them, but it's not very dangerous. In the event that you will feel that, you may just find a chair or a table and go underneath, but we would not be asked to exit the property. One more would be cyclone, but cyclone is not during this period of the year, would be more in March or April, so we don't need to share that with you. So at the end, I wish you again a good conference during this week, and enjoy your day. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, bienvenue. My pleasure to be your master of ceremony today. First things first, Mr. Gorab Upadhyaya couldn't make it to New Caledonia, so we'll hear a little greetings video from him. Let's go for video. Okay. Ready? Ongoing.
Monsieur Gail Yano, the chair of OPT-NC, Monsieur Felipe Gervelino, director of OPT-NC, my fellow APNIC EC members, invitees to this conference, and all conference attendees, bonjour and good morning. Welcome to APNIC 46. I am Gaurav Upadhyaya, the chair of the APNIC Executive Council. First of all, apologies for not being there in person, and thank you everyone who had joined us from far and wide. We are deeply honored to have this meeting in Nouméa, hosted by OPT-NC. Gail, Felipe and the entire OPT team has been great friends of APNIC for many years. So we are really glad to be here on their home turf. Thank you once again on behalf of the entire APNIC community towards your continued support to the OPT-NC family. Personally, this will be the first time in 16 years that I missed an APNIC meeting in person. But on the positive side, this gives me first an experience of our remote participation mechanisms. In fact, yesterday we had an all-day EC meeting that I conducted remotely. And I didn't feel much different because I was able to get along with the banter that goes in these meetings. And so I plan to virtually attend the next 3 days and figure out what works and what doesn't work. Hopefully everything works because this is one of the best locations to test this from, an island on the Pacific, one of the areas of the world with the most challenges in connectivity, and about which you'll hear from Jonathan Brigger, our keynote speaker, very soon. Back to EC business, one of the main items this week will be the release of our survey report. It will be available on the website today, and Survey Matters, our survey managers, will present it during the AMM. Thank you to all of you who participated in the survey for the tremendous responses. And I'd like to assure you on behalf of the EC that we'll take very careful look at all the feedback and incorporate those in our planning activities for the future years. Now, before I end, I had been planning for this trip for a long time. Actually in December when I got the tickets. And so I've been looking around and researching about New Caledonia quite a bit. And it's quite amazing that for a country with about, 250,000 people, there is almost 75,000 internet connections, which means almost 100% of the households are connected. At the same time, OPT also has 100% mobile coverage, with almost 85% of the population enjoying 4G speeds. I hope some of you got the SIM cards and are actually enjoying it. If not, do it now. This is all quite amazing for me. I come from Nepal, a fairly small geography, but with 28 million people. And the comparisons are quite stark. I think the investment that OPT-NC and the government of New Caledonia made on the submarine cable connecting to Australia has already paid off in terms of bringing this connectivity to the people here. And all the other socioeconomic benefits that it brings. In the end, before I end, the event would not have been successful or possible without the support of our host, staff, and most importantly, the sponsors. Special call out to our platinum sponsors, Intelia and Adrex. We have a huge local sponsorship support in New Caledonia, and thank you to all of our regular and new sponsors. Hopefully, we'll see you again and again. Enjoy the rest of the week. As I said, I'll be online and virtually attending. For now, thank you and au revoir.
Many thanks to Gaurav. We'll miss him. Let me introduce you to Mr. Gael Yano, who's President of the Congress of New Caledonia, as well as Chair of OPT-NC. Mr. Yano.
Mesdames et Messieurs les membres du comité exécutif de l'APNIC, Mesdames et Messieurs les ministres et représentants des gouvernements du Vanuatu, des îles Cook, de Tonga, de Samoa, d'Inde, de Chine, Mesdames et Messieurs, je tiens tout d'abord à excuser Philippe Germain, président du gouvernement de la Nouvelle-Calédonie, et Bernard Deladrière, membre du gouvernement en charge de l'économie numérique, qui ne peuvent malheureusement être présents aujourd'hui avec nous. Je représenterai donc les institutions de la Nouvelle-Calédonie en tant que président du Congrès, qui est l'organe législatif du territoire. Je suis heureux, au nom de tous les représentants de la Nouvelle-Calédonie, d'accueillir l'APNIC à Nouméa, dans sa 46e édition, ainsi que les 350 participants des 34 pays de la zone Asie-Pacifique, que je salue chaleureusement, tout particulièrement les membres de pays de la zone océanienne, nos voisins et partenaires immédiats. And as you are mostly English speaking, I just would like to tell you a few words in English, and I want to wish you, because you come from all over the world and all over this Asian and South Pacific region, and I like really very kindly to welcome you in New Caledonia on behalf of the Congress of New Caledonia and on behalf of all the official authorities of this small French territory of the South Pacific. La Nouvelle-Calédonie est partie prenante de cet écosystème international et régional et doit y trouver sa place. C'est tout le sens des actions de diplomatie économique et de rayonnement régional portées par le territoire. Et le numérique est appelé à y contribuer. Un numérique qui joue aujourd'hui un rôle essentiel comme support d'un modèle alternatif de développement de la Nouvelle-Calédonie dans plusieurs secteurs. Économie, culture, santé, éducation, modernisation de l'administration, maîtrise des dépenses publiques, tout en veillant à ne pas laisser une partie de la population isolée. Élaboré en 2013, le plan stratégique pour l'économie numérique répond aux enjeux de cette nouvelle économie liée aux nouvelles technologies. L'économie numérique ne se limite pas au secteur des technologies de l'information et de la communication. Il faut y ajouter ceux des télécommunications, de l'audiovisuel, du logiciel, de l'Internet et des secteurs qui utilisent les TIC en tant que cœur ou support de leur activité. Cette nouvelle économie contribue de manière significative au produit intérieur brut et à sa croissance. Elle crée de nouvelles sociétés et de nouveaux emplois, de nouvelles richesses, de nouveaux services et bien sûr de nouveaux usages. La Nouvelle-Calédonie modernise son administration pour la rendre encore plus accessible via la mise en place de téléservices au bénéfice des Calédoniens, rompre l'isolement des populations, réduire la fracture numérique et fournir aux usagers, particuliers, entreprises, associations, les outils nécessaires à leur développement. Je suis également président du conseil d'administration de l'Office des postes et télécommunications de Nouvelle-Calédonie, qui est votre hôte local. Établissement public en monopole sur les télécommunications, l'OPT-NC est l'aménageur de la Nouvelle-Calédonie en matière de réseaux fixes et mobiles et de connectivité numérique domestique et internationale. Les résultats du dernier baromètre numérique montrent une forte progression des usages entre 2011 et 2018 et surtout montrent aussi que le pays est très connecté, comme s'il existe encore de fortes marges de progression. La filière numérique calédonienne repose largement sur les télécommunications, dont l'Office des postes et télécommunications représente 40% du chiffre d'affaires. Pour répondre à ces enjeux, la Nouvelle-Calédonie a lancé une étude pour définir la stratégie des télécommunications et espère doubler la part du numérique dans son produit intérieur brut, c'est-à-dire pour le passer de 3 à 6%. Je vous souhaite un très bon séminaire et également une pleine réussite pour cette 46e édition de l'APNIC. Merci.
Thank you very much, Mr. Yano. Let me introduce you to Mr. Philippe Javolino, who's chairman of OPT New Caledonia. Sorry. Director General, CEO.
Thank you, Naike. I'll try to do my best in English. Paul and Blondine asked me to do the speech in English, so I apologize for the mistakes or wrong accent. Ladies and gentlemen, member of the APNIC Executive Committee, honorable minister and government representative of Vanuatu, Cook Islands, Tonga, Samoa, India and China, dear participants. By supporting the evolution of Internet and responding to local development needs for more than 20 years, OPT confirmed its role as a digital implementer of the territory, serving New Caledonia, public policies, populations, businesses, and communities. OPT contributes every day to develop the economy, tourism, health, education, and accessibility. It does promote the attractiveness of the territory, but also contribute to New Caledonia's place in its regional environment. This digital program concerns very high-speed internet, networks, mobiles, and fixed, and submarine cable. I had the pleasure to present you all those projects in 2014 during the APNIC 38 in Brisbane. At this time, it was a PowerPoint program, but today those projects have been implemented. First of all, I will speak about very high-speed mobile. The expansion of the existing network has continued for the past 4 years. Today, nearly 98% of the population access to the mobile network through nearly 380 mobile sites, and nearly 75% of the network is in 4G, and half of the population is using mobile internet. Also, a major challenge for New Caledonia is the very high-speed fixed network. The deployment of optical fiber began 3 years ago, and it's a long journey from 10 to 12 years to be completed. This program aims to migrate from copper to fiber, the whole network, at no additional cost for the customers and the Caledonian people. Today, nearly 10,000 people are connected to the fiber, more than 15% of homes and businesses. Finally, at the end of this year, OPT will choose the supplier for the second international and domestic submarine cable, which will be deployed in 2020. This objective is to secure our traffic internet that doubles every 18 months. OPT is an APNIC member since 1929 and a faithful partner for the past 5 years. Selected in 2013 to organize the APNIC 38, we unfortunately had to decline because of logistic constraints, but the team still was motivated and persevering, so we have again submitted an application, and New Caledonia has been selected to host this 46th edition. And finally we did it, and finally you are all here. Thank you, all of you. On behalf of all our partners, on behalf also of my teams, I'm very happy and very proud to welcome you to this conference, and also I hope that you will get the opportunity to extend your stay to discover our beautiful island. Bienvenue, enjoy your conference, enjoy your stay. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Philippe. And now let me introduce you to Paul Wilson, APNIC Director General. Paul, if you please.
Thank you. Merci. Bienvenue tout le monde. That's welcome all to APNIC 46. Especially welcome to Gaël Llano, the chair of OPTNC, our old friend, also Philippe Gervolino, the CEO, others at OPT, Gaël de Santo, and other staff. Thank you so much for supporting this event. I think we know you worked really hard over quite a few years to make this a success, to bring us here, and that's really hugely appreciated. Thank you to the sponsors of APNIC 46 as well, including the Government of New Caledonia. We have 23 sponsors here and 10 of them local, which is a great number. So without that support as well, we certainly couldn't be here. So merci beaucoup. APNIC comes pretty often to the Pacific, and this event, I think, shows why. We've got delegates here from 12 different Pacific Island countries, and more than 80% of our fellows are from the Pacific region. It's really just wonderful to see this level of interest and enthusiasm from the local people. And it's also really great to be able to bring others, to give others the opportunity to be here to see this incredibly beautiful part of the world. It's also really great timing because these are pretty exciting times for the internet in the Pacific, for internet infrastructure and its development here. There are more submarine optic fibre cables being deployed here in the Pacific than anywhere else in the world, and also to places that I think a few years ago would never have been expected to receive a cable at all. Not only that, but we're hearing about second cables now being in demand. There are also new satellite services coming in to compete with the cables, new technologies coming over the horizon, literally, and those new technologies are also going to make a huge difference. There is a lot of local access infrastructure, mobile and cable fixed line access services. There's other internet infrastructure, essential things like IXPs and data centres, CDN caches as well, and also important community initiatives like CERTs and NOGs like PACNOG. Governments are responding with regulations and reforms, from telecom sector liberalisation to national broadband and cybersecurity policies. And the thing is that these are all the things that you see in established internet markets around the world, but all coming fairly rapidly into the Pacific. So with all of this extra bandwidth and connectivity and competition and community, I'm sure that the services are getting better and more reliable and also cheaper for all Pacific Islanders. And that's what APNIC works for, in fact, for an open, global, stable and secure internet that serves the whole region. So as the internet grows and matures anywhere in the world, we know that cybersecurity is a priority. APNIC has been very active in this area in the AP region as a whole, but also in the Pacific. And I'm really proud of the role that APNIC played in establishing 3 new CERTs here in the Pacific. That's CERT Tonga back in 2016, the PNG CERT just in January this year, and CERT Vanuatu in June. We're actually joined here in this meeting by 13 ICT and security staff from different countries of the region joining security workshops, and these are the people who are going to be spreading the CERT message back at home to get things started or to keep them growing in their own countries. And I want to give a special welcome to all of those people. Developing cybersecurity amongst non-technical people is just as important for managers and policymakers and law enforcement, for schools and for NGOs as a key to strengthening the whole region's cybersecurity and cyber safety. So we're working with governments and we're encouraging an inclusive so-called multi-stakeholder approach to cybersecurity from the start, because we know, most of us know, that this kind of model is the model that will best serve the internet community and the industry as it does in other parts of the world. And talking about governance, last month actually, this is the second time APNIC has been at Pacific meetings in the last month. Last month, the Asia Pacific Regional IGF was hosted in Vanuatu for the first time, and that built on an earlier Pacific IGF. And there was really an excellent turnout there with participants from all over the region again, which made it a really world-class event. And it was followed with a resolution to form a Vanuatu IGF. And so that's yet another component of a healthy internet governance infrastructure, which I'd really encourage all of you to watch. So for such a relaxed, laid-back place, we're seeing a lot of action in the Pacific, and I really encourage everyone here at APNIC 46 to approach this meeting in the same way, with a sort of friendly energy and engagement. Please do get involved with the discussions, from the technical to the cooperation to the operational to the policy meetings. Meet people, meet APNIC people too, please. There's quite a few of us here, and we're here to serve all members of the community. And do make most of your time here, as much in the rooms as on the beach, I hope. So thanks again for coming, and I really do wish you a productive and enjoyable time. Thanks. Merci.
Thank you very much, Paul. And now for something completely different, let me introduce you to a group from Lifu. Lifu is a small island not far from Numia. Really? Yes, sorry, my mistake. So it's time for VIP gifts exchange. And please, the official party, come to a group photo, please, on the stage. Can you move for the lights? Paul? Philippe? C'est pour toi.
So we're coming down now, I think, so the entertainment can stay.
Thank you very much. We are setting up the stage for the performers. This time, for something completely different. They are from Lifu, which is a small island from Numia. Please make some noise for Nehru's.
Souffler d'un d'un regard de femme, caressant le désir que l'instant nous offre. Nul doute que Laurent nous guette pour conclure notre histoire. Moi et toi, le vrai témoin de l'aventure, laisse-moi ce plaisir intense de suivre le dernier pas de danse de ce vent d'amour. Chassi filo e ni animelo, tini maya senilo, kelenilo, uda uda ijilo, mazuma il capo e lolo. Menelai che pilla camune, anu e ni masha. Ta segnava che lei amore so. Menelai che pilla camune, anu e ni masha. Ta segnava che lei amore so. Nouveau jour qui se lève et qui disparaît, c'est comme toujours le même rêve à recommencer. C'est comme tourner autour de toi sans jamais te toucher. C'est un amour qui me lève pour mieux me lâcher. Juste un bonjour qui m'achève au bout d'une journée. Et quand vient le soir, je n'ai plus que le sommeil pour te retrouver. C'est comme contempler tes yeux sans y voir le creux. C'est comme t'approcher un peu, mourir un petit peu. C'est comme un jeu sans enjeu où je serai toujours en jeu. Menelai che pilla camune, anu e ni masha. Ta segnava che lei amore so. Menelai che pilla camune, anu e ni masha. Ta segnava che lei amore so. Il est de ces amours qui laissent les cœurs aussi dévastés que le lendemain de guerre, aussi asséchés qu'une rose au milieu du désert. Au milieu du désert. Mais il en est d'autres qui ravissent les âmes, qui ne craignent plus ni l'enfer ni les flammes. Ils rêvent de ce paradis où l'amour est ses âmes. Menelai che pilla camune, anu e ni masha. Ta segnava che lei amore so. Menelai che pilla camune, anu e ni masha. Ta segnava che lei amore so. Maikizie Ninairo Ziluzi Koitepe Nikanadini Maikizie Ninairo Ziluzi Koitepe Nikairo Zikwala Tairo Popinene Kwazela Nikanadini Maikizie Ninairo Nina iluzi, luzi, luzi, koitepel.
Neke iluzi, wala tairo.
Opinene kwezela. Mazoije,
Mama maseje,
mama mazoini soke luzi hel mazoije.
mama maseje,
Mama mazoini soke tari hel mazoije. Mama mazoini soke luzi hel mazoije.
mama maseje,
Mama mazoini soke tari hel mazoije.
mama maseje,
Mama mazoini soke luzi hel mazoije.
mama maseje,
Mama mazoini soke tari hel. Kele lo idu aina we, jamais ni lo tamale. Kele ni lo idu aina we, kasali laika puede ni. Kele ni lo idu aina we, jamais ni lo tamale. Kele ni lo idu aina we, kasali laika puede ni. Mama, mama ashes, yeah, yeah. Mama, Mikey, Mikey's, yeah, yeah. Mama, mama ashes, yeah, yeah. Mama, Mikey, Mikey's, yeah, yeah. Girito mamange, nawazi luzi luthinine.
Girito minge,
Nawazi luzi luthinine.
girito mange,
Nawazi luzi luthinine.
girito minge, nawazi luzi luthi, girito tomato, tomato ngane waka, tasire rendezvous, ere kainani wae.
Nawazi luth, nawazi luth, nawazi luzi luthini. Nawazi luth, nawazi luth, nawazi luzi luthini. Nawazi luth, nawazi luth, nawazi luzi luthini. Nawazi luth, nawazi luth, nawazi luzi luthini.
Ladies and gentlemen, Nehrus. Some more claps for Nehrus. Okay, I think it's time for keynotes. So, our first keynote today will look at the internet security challenges facing all of us. Raja Azrina Raja Othman is one of the founders on Malaysian's Computer Emergency Response Team, MyCERT, the former CTO for Cybersecurity Malaysia's Digital Forensics Lab, and an experienced security advisor to many large telcos. I'm looking forward to hearing this talk. Please welcome Azrina.
Can you see me? Right. First of all, thank you for the introduction, and thank you to the organizer, APNIC, for having me here. Thank you to the representatives from the government and the many participants from various economies that are here today. So I've been tasked, to cover on cybersecurity. I'm not sure if this is comfortable. It's a bit too hard. Okay. Right. I'll try and try to stand taller. Right. I'd like to recall here, one of the beliefs that I have is that in moving forward, we need to know where we were, where we are now, and where we want to be. So I'm borrowing concept here to give us a bit of an understanding on where the development of the computing and networking has progressed. Now, it began with standalone computing back in the 80s and later evolved in the 90s. Better. In the 90s, where we actually have further advancement in networking. In the 90s, we were actively connecting economies. I remember back then, Malaysia, we started connecting to the United States and Japan back in the late 80s. Now, in the early 2000, there was a breakthrough of killer applications on social media. Everyone became publishers, right? So the web technology stabilized and became very much a household item. So that's where the browser comes in. It becomes very natural application in UI. Now, that's what we called the third platform. Moving on, now we are seeing instances, pockets of what we foresee in future would be what they call the omni-connected world. Now, here we foresee that there will be more interconnectivity of IoTs, sensors, connected to back-end system with AI and machine learning and various technology, that what it does is basically predict your wants and needs of the people, right? So, so in terms of cybersecurity, the development has also progressed, okay? Not such in a good way though, okay? So, wonderful, right? Okay. So in cybersecurity, the development has been in such a way that the evolution of threat has progressed towards a different level. So if before we are seeing penetration hacking for the mere joy and resulting in annoyance, okay, to the victims, now we are seeing more stealthy manner of attacks, more persistent, and ones that will remain residing on your machine, unknown to you for over 200 days, okay, and without the user even realizing that there are infestation and infection on your computer. And this is purely designed, okay, in such a way that your computing facilities, your identities, your information and privilege access are being mined, collected, harvested, used in such a way that it benefits other parties, right? So that's the reality of the current situation. Now, what does that mean to us in understanding the threat? How do we prepare ourselves? So there's various development in cybersecurity, and one in which I'd like to quote here is the one initiated by NIST, United States. They have come up with what they called a cybersecurity framework. Now, this is not something new, but it's actually an incident response steps that we've been following for over 2 decades. And what it has done is basically break up the controls, the security controls that we implement into our solutions into various types and functions. So one is to identify the assets. What are the assets that we're trying to protect? Secondly, what are the mechanisms that we're using to protect these assets? And thirdly, how do we identify and detect malicious and anomalous activities in the network? Now, the good thing about this is that there are various technology out there in the market currently that can help you in identifying in addressing the first three stages. Okay? Unfortunately, what happens is that in the response and recovery, we are still very much dependent on human interventions. Right? Now, one of the four items that I want to highlight, the challenges that we face, okay, in security, is that the challenge of taking down domains or hosts. Okay? Now, one of the things that I've discovered is that over the years, I've been doing CERT for the last 20 years. I find that now we are still doing it the same way in domain takedowns. Okay? So I face situations where financial institutions come to me and say that they've been requesting for domain takedowns for weeks, but nothing has been done. Now, what do? We notify the registrar, we notify the CERTs, the local CERTs, the countries where the offending entity is residing still. It's depending very much on the cooperation of these various entities to initiate those takedowns. Now, secondly, the fact that it's dealing with cross-border makes it even more difficult because we're dealing with different time zones. Now, the last two challenges that I find a change, okay, a shift from what we had before. We have cases like Blaster Worm dealing with 18-year-old creating malwares, okay, and I've been found given jail terms over 18 years. But now we're dealing with more organized criminals. So we have, if you are reading headlines, you will notice that the last few days there's been announcement of news on the charges that have been put against a North Korean for the outbreak of WannaCry. Okay. Now, this has been associated to state-sponsored attacks. Now, that becomes difficult because by putting one person behind bars may not actually stop the activity because this is a well-organized and well-funded activity. Okay. So the last challenge we have is the fact that when 10 or 20 years back, when we deal with CNC, or what we call the command control servers, these are servers that basically control botnets. Our objective is actually to take down the CNCs. Now, what we are seeing, there are initiatives by commercial entities to take over these CNCs. Why is that important? Because when you take over or you take down a CNC server, you gather a lot of information pertaining to the victims. Okay? It is an advantage. Okay? And these are concerns that among the security fraternities, how do we deal with such development? Now, one of the research that I did with a few other researchers is one that relates to phishing domains. Now, I'm sure all of us are very familiar with phishing and spamming. And in any economy that are well connected, you will definitely come across such threat. Now, I was actually trying to understand why is it that it was a futile effort that every time we take down a host or domain, another one pops up. Now, we collected data based on known phishing sites that are blacklisted, over 500 domains. We queried them for 3 months on a daily basis, and it was an eye-opener for me, and it took me aback to know that what was found is that there was a very organized attempt to organize the information in such a way that the domains pertaining to certain areas for example, the spams that you get on pharmaceutical. They are actually resolving to dedicated name service. Okay? So when we look at this data, we learn that by taking down the domains is not enough. We need to take down the name servers. By killing name servers, we basically are crippling the domains, the other spokes from resolving, right? So these are things that we learn along the way. And this is a research that we did in 2012. And we find ICANN and there are other researchers that are also pursuing on fast flux research, because it gives you a better insight and more strategic response as to how to deal with phishing, okay, and spamming. Now, in another context of technology, okay, while we deal with all these threats, there are multi-layered attempts that we need to invest in. We need to put in effort to design solutions in infrastructure that we deploy. Now, we are very excited about IoT. Unfortunately, the trend is that they come with vulnerabilities. And with that, we need to understand how do we deal with technologies. And when we look at them, for security controls, it boils down to one of the three. The technology is either a whitelisting technology, whether it's a learning analytics technology, or it's a blacklisting technology. It can be a combination of two or all three of these. Now, the challenge is these technologies can be applied at the gateways. It can be applied at the host level. It can be applied at the applications level, yeah? But eventually, it needs to be designed in such a way that it works in harmony together. It should not be in conflict. It should not work against each other. And that's where you get inefficiency, performance. And performance is one of the enemy of security, because if you have performance issue, the first thing that will go is security. People will start poking holes in your operations just to get things going, and it will weaken the security. So in balancing ease of use, functionality, and performance, you need to also balance out the security to ensure that you have it covered. Finally, what I'd like to have you as a food for thought is that how can we do better? How can we design better infrastructure? For someone that come over 20 years ago, implementing internet in Malaysia, we learn throughout the way. For new economies, new countries that are jumping into the bandwagon, adopting new technology, you can learn and not to repeat the mistakes that we did, okay? And you can do better, okay? So interconnectedness is not something that we can push aside. It will come, and it is something we need to embrace. However, we need to understand the threats that comes with it, the security requirements, the privacy, and most importantly, we're talking about physical security, physical systems. And when we're talking about physical systems, how it ties up is the IoT. And although we think that this is a small economy, we're not into IoT so much, where and behold, the CCTV that you're using, the air-conditioned HVAC system that you're using, the dam operations, the port operations that you have, the systems that you have, the traffic light systems, they are all based on IoT. And these are the ones that needs a proper design to incorporate the security requirement. And lastly, I'd like to highlight the importance of ensuring that when you do development, whether it's technology or just software solutions, design security from start, from the requirement stage. If you cover the first 3 steps that I have down there, the testing and the coding will be much more smoother and faster. And this is not a theoretical formula that I've picked up from some textbook. It's something that I've developed along the way and tested it. And I find that the development that we did for 2 years in software development, where we spent more time in the design and requirements, it makes it much easier when we do the coding. Although I must say, for among software developers and coders, security is not second nature to them. You have to work with them. Security practitioners need to work with multidiscipline in order to make it an understanding that input validation must always be there. Okay? When you design, develop coding, you need to plan out and ensure you embed the security controls, basic things like input validation, how you handle credentials, storage, and all that. Now, having done that, when you do the testing and iteration, it will be very minimal and it will be very efficient. So I hope that this will be a takeaway for you to consider as some of the future projects that you might be involved in. Thank you again for your attention, and I'm very appreciative of having me here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Azrina. I would like to invite Paul on stage to thank Azrina. Our second keynote today, our keynote speaker is Jonathan Brewer. Jonathan is a consulting network engineer who is well known to many in this community as an experienced trainer. His areas of interest include radio spectrum, wide area networks, the Internet of Things, and Internet research, including a strong focus on researching connectivity in the Pacific, which he will talk about today. Please welcome Jonathan.
Hello, and thank you everyone, and thank you APNIC for having me here today. It was great to meet, I think, 100 of you over the last couple of days in the training workshops. I think they went off really well. So we're going to talk about networking in the Pacific, but first we're going to talk about getting here to New Caledonia. Consider Pohnpei and Noumea, Pohnpei and the Federated States of the Micronesia. It's a little over 3,300 kilometers between them, but you can't get there from here. This is a map of all of the flights that were available for you to get here in time for this talk this morning. All the possible flights and connections sorted by shortest duration. This is a network meeting, so I'm going to call this the lowest latency path. First, you fly to Chuuk and stay on the plane because then you're going to Guam. Hey, University of Guam guys, thanks for coming today. Then you head up to Tokyo, and because all of the Air Kalen flights from Tokyo to Noumea were sold out, you go to Sydney. Like Matt did yesterday. And then finally, you get to Noumea, and the lowest latency path on this route, if you wanted to get here in time for this talk, was 34 hours long to go 3,300 kilometers. Now, there are shortest distance paths, like the Air Kalen flight from Tokyo to Noumea, but they were congested. They were out of capacity. Just like some of the submarine cables we're going to talk about in the next few minutes. So here's a review of Pacific cables from 2000, because we had a couple of important things happen, to 2018. Most of the important things happened in the last couple of years, but number one most important cable for the Pacific is the Southern Cross. And I think it was commissioned in late 2000, early 2001. It was the first all-optical cable to connect Australia, Fiji, New Zealand to the United States. There was an optical submarine cable before called PAC-RIM. PAC-RIM made the mistake of putting electrical repeaters in between their spans of optical cable. So it crippled that cable and made it so it would never go faster than about a gigabit per second. A gigabit per second isn't much anymore. I have that in my house in New Zealand because that's just how fiber to the home works. So, quick note here, none of the operators that built this cable, I believe they were Telecom New Zealand, Optus, and what's now Verizon, none of these are called Telstra. Next important cable, however, was mostly Telstra, and that's the Australia-Japan cable, which stopped in Guam too. Sydney's second modern fiber optic cable happening just around the same time as Southern Cross. Telstra was a 40% owner in this cable. Now, after this, we have the Australia PNG2 cable. And I spoke a moment ago about the PAC-RIM cable, which was kind of badly planned. Electrical repeaters, well, it was so unuseful that it was decommissioned after less than 12 years in service. And bits of that cable were cut up and used for other projects. For example, for Port Moresby. So a section of the cable from the south of Guam was cut up and dragged down into Port Moresby Harbor, and then it was joined up to the northbound cable terminating in Sydney. APNG is a 1.1 gigabit per second cable, still in use today, and it's still the primary connectivity from Port Moresby to Sydney, which may change any day now with some new satellite stuff they've been working on for the APEC meeting. We jump all the way to 2008 before anything really happens. So we've gone from 2001 to 2008, nothing happening in the Pacific. And then I think by this point, Telstra's US-bound traffic had grown to the point that leasing capacity on Southern Cross was no longer economical and was more expensive than actually building their own cable. So Telstra built themselves a cable to Hawaii, and they were able to gain from there a number of paths to the US and some redundancy for their links to Japan and Guam, and probably a lot of negotiating power because a lot of companies all over the world really wanted to get to Australia, so they were able to trade rights on their new cable with other people who had connectivity other places. Next, we've got the most important cable for us here today, and the first cable specifically to a Pacific island, not just passing by like Fiji, but directly to a Pacific island, and that's Gondwana 1. That was financed by OPT, 42 million euro deal with Alcatel to build the cable. I'd assume the government of New Caledonia paid for this in the end. Unrepeated extensions to some of the small islands, including where I think our singers came from. I think they have a domestic cable. So this is a fantastic cable now, and I expect it to be a fantastic cable for the next 15 to 20 years. Now we get to 2009. 2009, we have the ASH cable, the American Samoa Hawaii cable, just like the PNG cable. This is a segment of PAC-RIM East that they cut up and they hauled into the harbor. And I've got a funny side story here. I know the path that it took to get hauled into Pago Pago Harbor because the tracks of the ship laying the cable were included in one of those documents that Edward Snowden released to the internet. Interesting, interesting. So, ASH cable has been live since 2009. It was almost immediately out of capacity because American Samoa has a relatively advanced market for the Pacific and people use the internet. Its life is almost over because honestly at 1 gigabit per second, there's just too much contention. So at the same time as ASH, a new cable was laid between American Samoa and Samoa. And this one didn't have those same restrictions. It didn't have any electrical repeaters. In fact, I don't think it has any repeaters at all. The result of this is they started running the cable at 2.5 gigabits per second, But when they launched it, they thought, well, this cable has a capacity of 160 gigabits per second. But honestly, today, if you were to put new equipment on the end of it, it would probably run at a terabit without any problem. So single pieces of fiber optic cable from one place to another with no repeaters, very, very easy to make them run as fast as you will ever need. Now, Asia-America Gateway was the first cable to connect the US and the Pacific to Southeast Asia. Led by Malaysia Telecom, who wanted connectivity to the US, wanted better connectivity to the US. The cable eventually picked up 18 partner telcos. So there are a lot of people who really like and use this cable, including two of the Philippine carriers, PLDT and Globe. In my experience, AAG is now the most popular and common carrier for telcos from the South Pacific. If they're interconnecting in Guam, they're jumping on AAG either to go to Asia to Hong Kong to Singapore or to go to California. Next up, we have PPC-1. PPC-1 wasn't new connectivity, but remember we had Telstra with that Telstra Endeavour cable and Telecom New Zealand and Optus with the other cable to Sydney. Not a lot of competition there, so prices were very, very high. PPC-1 was founded to build a cable from Sydney to Guam to compete, to offer competitive bandwidth at competitive rates. When the cable was designed, they did have some quite big ideas. They built a branch unit that was facing New Zealand, a branch unit facing Brisbane, a branch unit facing Port Moresby, and a branch unit facing Madang. Unfortunately, they were unable to get their commercials right. They were unable to get anyone to connect up to the cable except for Telecom PNG, who had a bit of a geography problem. Now, you see, they have a cable already. What are they doing getting another cable just how many years later? Like 3 years later? Second cable? Here's the problem. You can't get from Madang to Port Moresby. Just like you can't get from Pohnpei to New Caledonia. You can't get there easily. You can get up on some microwave towers and go across on a long and convoluted and difficult to access and maintain path. But honestly, the least complex way of doing it is while PPC-1 was going by, putting a very short branch into Madang, sending all of your traffic between Madang and Lae and the northern part of PNG to Port Moresby via Sydney. Okay, 2010 now, we have a single fiber pair built from Guam to Kwajalein for a very special customer. Kwajalein has 1,000 people, so I'm going to call that the smallest island ever connected and the smallest island that ever will be connected via a major submarine cable. A second pair was laid in the same sheath, fortunately, and that has some bridge units at Pohnpei and Kwajalein and branches off to Majuro, and that enables civilian telecommunications use of the cable for providers in Federated States of Micronesia and Republic of the Marshall Islands. This is the Hantru 1 cable, and that terminates in Guam, where a lot of the bandwidth jumps straight to either Tokyo or California without really interconnecting other places. Hanatua was French Polynesia's answer to New Caledonia and Gondwana. Initially lit at 10 gigabits per second, went into an old AT&T landing station in Hawaii and had some real problems getting out to the rest of the world from there because of ownership of the cable landing station and access for interconnection, enough that there was a lawsuit that if you ever need help sleeping, you can start reading some of these legal documents about denying access to the cable landing station. But it's an interesting story, and it shows that even though a cable goes somewhere, it doesn't mean it's useful. So when I visited French Polynesia 3 years ago, at that point they were still sending all of their traffic straight to California without leaving the cable landing station, and they were just moving from 10 gigabits a second to 40 gigabits a second. Tonga Suva is another one of these direct island cables, and it's called Tonga Suva, but really it should be called Suva Tonga, because Suva is the important part here. It's the Tongans, they want to get to Suva. However, they don't get to Suva. They sort of get to Suva. I mean, they get close, but because of some peculiarities in Fijian telco regulation, thank you, Commerce Commission of Fiji, there's a massive tax for any bandwidth that crosses part of a room in the landing station. If you want to bring bandwidth into Fiji, which means move from one side of the cable landing station to the other where the domestic interconnections happen, you need to pay a tax, a very large tax, which equals around $25 per megabit, yes, for incoming traffic. Now, that's high because in California right now, I can buy internet traffic at 15 cents a megabit. So what happens with Tonga Suva traffic, except if it's within the Digicel network, for the most part, it actually goes out to California via Southern Cross, or Oregon via Southern Cross, straight from the landing. We got another one here, Interchange 1. Now, Tonga Suva was the Tonga Cable Corporation and some development financing, and it's run as a separate entity that wholesales bandwidth. Interchange is different. It was funded between a partnership between an entrepreneur and the government of Vanuatu. Now, what's happened here is the government's stake has led them to expect a return on their investment. They invested in this cable. They want to have money coming out, and so their expectation of a return on their investment has caused a bit of trouble. Last year, the Prime Minister fired the regulator, and this was mainly to do with issues about regulating the cable and monopoly prices on the cable. The PM was unhappy about that because the money wasn't coming in. This is only 2 years after the Prime Minister's office fired the entire office of the regulator, 14 people in Vanuatu. So a bit of turbulence there. Now this year, about 3 months ago, the Supreme Court of Vanuatu reinstated the regulator. So she has her job back, and I'm not sure what the situation is now, but the case merits a serious discussion. What happens when global connectivity from a small island is looked upon by the government as a revenue source and not as a way of connecting its country to the global internet, not as a development exercise? I mean, the analog here is building a fancy airport and then making it so expensive that nobody uses the airport. So for the moment, Interchange is Vanuatu's only cable link to the world, but that could potentially change soon. The Interchange company is now in contract to build a second cable from Vanuatu called Interchange 2, and that's supposed to connect Vanuatu to the Solomon Islands. They're in contract to build the cable, but I have no idea if they have an anchor tenant or if anybody really wants to pay for bandwidth from Vanuatu to the Solomons, especially since the Solomons has just been offered a free submarine cable from the Australian government. Complicated stuff. Now, we have Tasman Global Access. From 2001 until 2017, New Zealand had one link to the rest of the world. And since I'm based in Wellington, this was a concern to me and pretty much everyone else. We had very high submarine cable prices for a very long time, and they changed in 2013 when this project was sort of brought up by Telecom New Zealand, now Spark, and Vodafone. And at the time, Telstra was going to be involved in the cable. So just the announcement that there was going to be a second cable from New Zealand to Australia caused pricing on the Southern Cross cable to drop precipitously, and a lot of good long-term deals were made, and prices have continued to drop and drop and drop. So I love it. It's great. Here we are. It's connecting a small town called Raglan outside of Auckland to Sydney. It's a very nice, simple, fast cable. Next up, we've got an interesting deal that came together starting in 2014. A new empire funded by guys in Connecticut, funny enough. They live in Norwalk, near my parents. I have no idea who they are, but they're calling themselves RAM Telecommunications International, and they started putting together deals with telcos to have a Guam hub network of cables. And the first piece of that was the Southeast Asia US cable, which was, when it started, a link from the south of the Philippines and the far east of Indonesia to the US via Hawaii and Guam. And really, we're landing in Hawaii to get electricity, to regenerate the signal, and we're landing in Guam mainly for the same reason. However, we've got some hubs, we've got some potential cables that are going to go both south and north from there to interconnect with. But this wasn't just a Southeast Asia to the US cable, as we'll see in the next couple of slides. It has turned into more than that, but I'm going to talk about the Philippines just for a moment, because it's sort of a Pacific island. Actually, it's sort of 6,000 Pacific islands. 7,000, but only 6,000 are inhabited, spread across a vast area. It shares a lot of problems that the Pacific Islands have. And I'll call attention to the CUS landing because of the 9 submarine cable landings in the Philippines, the CUS landing in Davao is the only one that's significantly south of Manila. And while there are some domestic submarine cables and microwave links connecting Mindanao and Davao, the major city there, to the north, they're all owned by the incumbent, a company called Philippine Long Distance Telephone, or PLDT. And they're not really known for playing nicely with other telcos. So if your name isn't PLDT, you have a very, very difficult time getting from Manila to Davao. So it's likely that for Globe, who are the major Philippine partner in CUS, getting their traffic from Davao to Manila is less costly and less complex sending it through Guam than it is sending it through domestic connections. All right, what happened with CUS? But a couple of Pacific islands said, hey, there's a cable going by. Let's connect up. So a spur from CUS to Koror is Palau's first submarine cable, financed with a $25 million loan from the Asian Development Bank. Palau has contracted with Globe to get some bandwidth. They've paid Globe about $3 million for the pleasure of connecting to Guam. Palau has 21,500 people, and the cost of this project is such that they're going to be charging $430 US a megabit for connectivity on this cable. I think it's going to be a bit hard for them to actually get the use up that way. We'll see what happens. We have an even smaller place, YAP, which is part of FSM, and 11,400 people. First submarine cable to pass anywhere near YAP. Federated States of Micronesia is crazy huge. It's like 2,000 kilometers across with a population of, I don't know, high tens of thousands, low hundreds of thousands, spread with thousands of kilometers between anywhere. So when a cable came by, it was an opportunity not to miss. It really was just connected in, I want to say July. Cable went live at the end of June. So this is really exciting for the people in YAP. Now we have the last big project in the Pacific, and one that was fermented for a number of years before things got going. And that's Tui Samoa. Now, American Samoa had this cable on ash, but that cable has been congested since day one, and it's been very expensive. Samoa's objective as a country in building this new cable was to break free of the chains of the high prices of ash, on which ISPs were and still are paying $1,500 per megabit for access. That's 10,000 times the cost of high-capacity connectivity in California. So when Samoa planned this cable, the nearest interconnection point to the global internet was Fiji, Suva. So they said, right, we're going to build a cable to Fiji. We're going to dump all of our bandwidth in Fiji. And because of that problem with Fiji's Commerce Commission and the fact that it's really expensive to cross that border of the cable landing station in Fiji, they said right away, we're going to do a deal with Southern Cross, and we're going to buy a circuit to Los Angeles, straight from Fiji. So they did that, and now everyone who goes on this cable from Samoa goes from Samoa to Fiji to, funny enough, Oregon, because that's where that part of the Southern Cross cable lands, and then down the coast to Los Angeles. went live in March 2018, and some of the providers in Samoa are using it, possibly not all. The first good thing that this cable did, aside from bring more bandwidth, lower cost bandwidth, was connect Savai'i. So there had been microwave links from the top of a volcano. I have my laser pointer, don't I? Sweet. So there's a nice volcano here, and there's a couple of hills here. So you went from Apia up here, and then over to this rim of the volcano, and then over to Vasivi to get bandwidth. And that bandwidth was, running out, because microwave is good for hundreds of megabits, low gigabits, but not much more. So now they have a fiber cable and unlimited capacity. Next up, we have Wallace and Futuna. So they presumably purchased capacity direct to Los Angeles. At least that's what my measurements show, and we'll talk about those in a bit. They financed their spurs separately to the main project, and they went live in April of this year. Vanua Levu was another sort of side project to TUI Cable, and World Bank's International Bank for Reconstruction and Development put in $6.5 million to help the recovery of Vanua Levu after the cyclone by giving them bandwidth. And this really, really eased up the huge pressure on the microwave links between the two islands, because Fiji is, after Hawaii, the biggest place in the Pacific by far. And they have good connectivity to both Sydney and the United States. And so they really don't have the huge bandwidth problems that the rest of the Pacific Islands do. So people really got used to using their mobile 4G in the big cities, and they get out to Savasavu and Vanua Levu, and it was super slow. So having this new fiber cable is allowing the carriers there to really increase their capacity. Now, after 18 years with a single cable from New Zealand to the US, and a single cable that actually went all the way from Australia to the West Coast, New Zealand and Australia finally gained some direct diversity through Hawaii, which went live in July of this year. If you noticed a TE Subcom ship in the harbor here in town, that's the ship that's on standby to maintain the Hawaii cable, and that ship or one like it will be around for the next 25 years, which is how long the cable is contracted for maintenance. Hawaii provides not a big ring like Southern Cross, but a very direct route with a few spurs, very low latency and inexpensive. And they're very special because Hawaii doesn't have any ownership of any government, no ownership from any telco. It's a completely private cable. No telcos, no governments. The anchor tenant for Hawaii was Amazon. I don't know if we have anybody from Amazon here today, but thank you, Amazon. That's great, wonderful of you. And a lot of the ISPs and telcos have jumped on to gain additional capacity and diversity in the case that something happens to Southern Cross. One of the great things that Hawaii did was helped us out with our ash cable problem in American Samoa. And the anchor tenant there was Azteca, and Azteca was the very first to sign up with Hawaii Cable because Azteca's competitor in American Samoa, Blue Sky, owned the ash cable, and Azteca hated having to pay them for access to the internet. So Azteca has increased the capacity of their connection to the global internet vastly, probably by 10 times on day one, and has allowed them to give up the use of the expensive ash cable. Now, I'm just going to talk about Hawaii for a minute because one of the special things about Hawaii Cable, it's the first cable to go into Hawaii in a neutral cable landing station. That means the cable landing station isn't owned by AT&T or Hawaii Telecom or Verizon or Telecom New Zealand Spark, or Telstra, whatever. For the longest time, carriers in Australia and New Zealand have wanted to get to the Honolulu Peering Exchange. And every other cable you land, you go from Sydney to Honolulu or Auckland to Honolulu, it costs you, say, $2 a megabit. And then to get that last 10 kilometers into town, it costs you $20 a megabit. Because access to all of those landing stations is restricted to the people who own the cable, and those people are the local telcos and their partners. And now Hawaiki is the very first cable to land in Hawaii that is in a neutral landing station. Anybody can bring their own fiber in, and I expect that the Research and Education Network in Hawaii, the Internet 2 component out there, is probably going to be connecting to that landing station very, very soon. And they'll be the first of many to bring their own fiber to get around the monopolist practices of the existing telcos. Last one, and apologies, Sunny, our organizer here, because I didn't turn in my slides until 90 minutes ago, and that's because we had a few new things happen. One of those new things was the Australia-Singapore cable, and that got turned on last week, unexpectedly and several months early. The western half of Australia has had one route of connectivity to the global internet for the past 18 years, and that has been a cable called CMUE 3, built around the same time as Southern Cross. CMUE 3 has been notoriously unreliable and has had cable breaks around Indonesia for a very long time. So this helps both Australia and the rest of the Pacific potentially get to Singapore, Southeast Asia, and South Asia on a more direct route than the northern route that most cables take. Okay, we've got a few countries here that are still unconnected, and I've put them up there. And yes, some of these, you see Kiribati twice? That's how big Kiribati is. It's just like FSM, it's just gigantic. So they are still unconnected. Some of these places, like Solomon's, Niue, Cook Islands, they have either cables funded or cables under construction. I'm not going to talk about anything that's not finished, because there was a cable going to Guam called Goki that was expected to go live in 2013. It didn't go live until the end of 2017. You never know with submarine cable projects if they're going to finish until they actually finish. So that's the end of the submarine cable section, because we've got another thing going on here. Satellites take just as long to plan and just as much money to fund in some cases as submarine cables, but once they're launched up into the air, they can quickly deliver coverage over quite a large region. So that makes satellites pretty special. When it comes to geostationary satellites, it's been very, very quiet in the Pacific. You know, satellites are so easy, it seems like a home run, and yet over the last 10 years, we've only had 8 new satellites with the potential to cover the Pacific. And of those satellites, they're nearly all dedicated to Australia, Japan, and Indonesia. Only 2 of those satellites are interesting to us in the Pacific. And note the area east of Tokelau where I put that 10 years of satellite title. I put that there because there's nothing there. There have been no new satellites over that entire area in 10 years. All right, satellite 1 we're interested in is JCSat-14, Japan Sky Perfect Corporation, in service July 2016. Around the time of the launch, they mentioned they had a partnership with a Pacific-focused satellite ISP, and that seems to have fallen through because they talked about it at a PETA meeting, and the satellite's not doing anything since then. I mean, it's doing plenty for Japan, but nothing for the Pacific. It could, however, figure into the plans of a savvy operator here. Next, we have Eutelsat or Eutelsat 172B, newest satellite to cover the Pacific, and its main purpose in life is to provide in-flight broadband for the tens of thousands of air passengers every day. It is making an impact on the islands, but not the ones we care about. So far, the only operator to announce a deal for Eutelsat 172B is Bamboo, who are covering the Philippines. Now we have something different, a medium Earth orbit network, and this is the one that has made a huge impact on the Pacific. It's called O3B Networks. They are the Pacific success story. I cannot even count the amount of end terminals in the Pacific for O3B. Network has been live since 2014, but they put another 4 satellites, which meant another 96 gigabits per second of capacity into service this year. That's more capacity than is in use by all of these new island projects that we just talked about put together. Heaps of capacity. O3B is really, really an outstanding project, and I understand that PNG has just taken on a whole bunch more O3B capacity in Port Moresby that they're going to use until they get their new submarine cable. Here's a picture of O3B and traffic from the Cook Islands, which are still on O3B lands in Hawaii. That's our link on the right here. Cooks to Hawaii, and then traffic from Port Moresby lands in Australia. And these guys whiz around the sky every sort of couple of hours or so. They make a rotation. So that's it for the connectivity part. I'm going to spend 5 minutes on metrics, and then we're done. I did promise some metrics, so I do need to deliver on that. We're going to pick on Wallace and Futuna today, who turned on their new submarine cable in April. As part of my project that I've been working on for the last 3 years, I do some measurements of submarine cables and performance of networks in the Pacific from various places. And in this case, I've got 700 days of measurements up on the screen, representing around 4 million pings from servers around the world. And we've got Auckland and Honolulu, Los Angeles, Seattle, Singapore represented. And it shows that on the 17th of April, right there, Wallace and Futuna had a bit of a change. Our end result is that Los Angeles is 130 milliseconds, which is great. I mean, that's a great latency for someone in the Pacific. Honolulu is a bit higher than Seattle, than Singapore, and Auckland. Look at that, though. Auckland was the fastest prior to the change, and now Auckland's the slowest. Something's wrong here. This is the actual set of latencies from Wallace to Honolulu, Los Angeles, Auckland, and Singapore. And now, here's what it would look like if Wallace was connected to the Hawaii cable at American Samoa. We should be sitting at 54 milliseconds here, 102 here, 51 here, and 150 there. What is happening is that Wallace is taking Tui Samoa to Fiji, and then through the Samoa Submarine Cable Corporation's Southern Cross bandwidth, they're taking the Southern Cross up to Oregon, because Southern Cross is a big loop. And when you buy bandwidth, you usually stay on the same segment. So they're going up to Oregon and then back down the coast to LA, which is resulting in 150 milliseconds. And then to get to Honolulu, they're coming back, because Samoa Submarine Cable didn't buy a multi-drop on Southern Cross, so they can't get off at Honolulu. They have to keep going. So they got to keep going all the way back here. And guess what? To get to Auckland, yeah, they got to keep going all the way to Los Angeles, and then somehow their routes are not just going to Los Angeles, but they're going back to Sydney and then to Auckland again. Singapore is faster than Auckland. So, how do we fix this? This is a problem. We're not going to fix this problem soon because they probably have some long-term bandwidth contracted. But what I am doing is working on these problems with the support of the Information Society's Asia Fund, APNIC, and the Network Startup Resource Center. And I have a website, the link will be next, which is my final slide, where you can find out more about the networks in the Pacific Island economies, where connectivity is important for them, and a bit about why people aren't peering and interconnecting and how we can start to fix some of those problems. So that is my last slide here. There's the link. There's a QR code if you like doing that. There's more information on me. And I thank you for being patient with me on this talk. I can't wait to talk to the rest of you for the next couple of days.
Thank you so much. Paul, if you please.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, gamers know what latency means when it comes to online gaming. So that's all, folks. I invite you to lunch break, and I hope that you will enjoy the rest of the day and of the conferences as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Nike. Just a small request, if you're a speaker in this conference and you're speaking in any of the sessions, please upload your slides. We need your slides at least 90 minutes before the session starts, so we can actually test them and see if it all works fine for you or not. Thank you. The formats are on the website. Thank you.